Okay guys, we have the EPP Elevons here. I had them molded in EPP. It's a little bit of a process to get them configured for the aircraft to be stiff enough, but if you want to take the time, they turn out really nice. Or you can use them as templates to make your balsa Elevons. The drawback is the balsa Elevons, you know, are going to be a little bit easier to produce. They are going to be fairly true and straight and stiff, but the slightest bump, you could actually damage them in the field. So the deal with these is if you take the time to make the Elevon straight out of the EPP and you do it with this process, they end up being very durable and you know, very, very, very rugged. So in this process, you're going to need a hot glue gun. You're going to need your goop. I got a little bit of a scraper here, so I can scrape some of this goop off when we're done. But the deal is just like everything else we've sparred with these glass spars, is we want to take the glass spars and we want to lay them, you know, on the Elevons. We want to trim these areas out so everything can be spun, you know, so we can go ahead and let this cure overnight and be stiff. But the first thing you're going to want to do is take your Elevons, tape them together. You want to clear these areas out so you can be able to spin them, just like I did here. So these were all able to be able to, you know, spun once you get a little glue in there. So once you get these ready to go, you're going to want to tape them together. So you're taping the whole root of the Elevons together. This keeps them straight, and you're going to want to start on the top. So tape them together, get your fiberglass rods put in, same as before. Run a layer of goop right through, give your rods a spin so they're encapsulated in the goop, and immediately after, do them one at a time. Scrape off the glue on the Elevon, and then let that dry sitting on the table, you know, at least an hour, and then flip it over and do the other side. Once you do the other side and you lock these in the same way, you're going to want to go ahead and leave everything taped together and then weight these down, because this is the other side's the flat side of the Elevon. You want to put these on a flat surface while they're taped together and let them lay on the flat surface with a little bit of weight in areas where the glue isn't going to stick. Let them dry overnight. After you let them dry overnight, you can come back and trim off your glass on the ends. And then what we do is we take the hot glue and we run another bead of goop. You can do it in a couple sections if you want. Run hot glue in maybe like 8 inches and then wipe it off, and then run hot glue in 8 inches and then wipe it off, and then the same at the end. So you're going to almost want to fill that gap. What this does is it allows a laminating film to stick to the hot glue really, really well, and it helps tie the surface tension of this laminating film across this EPP, and which is going to make it very, very stiff. After you hot glue it and you get this drug across here and pull off the excess hot glue by, you know, wiping it off, then we're going to go ahead and paint it. So I'll go over that process after this, and that's where we're at. Okay, you can see where I'm at this point. I have taken this first and second piece and put them down. You can see my overlap a little bit in there. Clearly the center hasn't been rolled in, but I've been working them from the center out. And the reason we're doing it in 3 pieces is to keep the potato chip taco effect out of this thing. So when you work them like this and you work each piece from the center out, you don't get this shrinkage of this material across the whole span, which causes it to turn up like a Pringle. So again, this is the last piece, and what I will do is start in the center like this. Say my iron looks like it's turned up to around 325. There you go. And then you want to go around the perimeter, cook it down. I didn't paint these Elevons because one nice thing about laminating film in the Elevons is when you're done, that a good plastic paint actually paints this stuff up pretty nice. So you could paint it with Plastidip prior. If you want to Plastidip these and then laminate them, I don't suggest painting them with paint. But if you want to shoot them with Plastidip prior to doing this, it's a good thing. I do that on some of them too. But sometimes I'll go ahead and paint the laminating film after it's already laminated on the Elevons, just because it makes it pretty easy. The laminating film sticks to this stuff pretty darn good. So I'm gonna go ahead and trim some reliefs in this, and we'll fold it over. Okay, you can see where I've done the bottom, and I tell you what, this thing is just, it's crazy stiff now that we've laminated the bottom of it. Have it overlap, so it's going to overlap onto the top. Now I'm going to go ahead, and you can see where I've cut all the reliefs. I'm going to go ahead and roll these over onto the top with the hot iron here. So I'll do that process, get them rolled over and rolled onto the top, and then we're going to go ahead and laminate again 3 pieces on here, 1, 2, and 3, and we'll do the exact same thing, and we're going to laminate it over onto the bottom. So wrapping these edges, laminating it like this makes it super strong. And then once all of that's done, and the reason we have this taped together is to make this true, once that's all done, it really locks these things into a very super stiff state. Everything around the edges is doubled up, and then you trim out the center right down the middle with a straight edge and a very sharp razor, and then you trim the middle and you roll that in, and these things are like machetes after that. That weigh nothing. I've taken the edges and flipped them up where they're sealed. What I've done is taken it around the edge of the table, and I've used my iron to roll, basically take my iron and use it to roll the edges up all the way around, and then come to the end and then roll them all up. So now I'm going to keep on going, and I'm going to go ahead and roll these over the rest of the way, cutting reliefs where I need them. Anywhere that it might be touching and trying to overlap wrong, I'll go ahead and cut them and relief them. Okay, I've rolled the edges over onto the top, so you can see nice all the way around. Again, this thing is crazy stiff. I'm going to go ahead and do the top in the 3 pieces just like I did the bottom. And then we will wrap the edges onto the bottom just like we did the top. When I'm putting the laminating film on the top, knowing this is the flattest part now, I've done it in 3 pieces. I'm about halfway through the middle. And one thing you don't want to do is trying to hold this flat while you're doing it. Let the iron rock the EPP to either side of the table. It doesn't really matter. You don't want to fight it, because if you're trying to hold it level while you're doing it, you're just going to distort it. So I've been starting in the center of each piece and working my way out. I got to about here, and then I stopped at the joint, and I worked this piece out, and now I'm going to this last piece, and I'm starting in the very middle of it, and I'm working my way onto the one and onto the other, and I'm working my way from the middle out, trying to keep the shrinkage and the distortion down. And as I'm going on to the next piece, I'm lifting the edge of my iron up a little bit as I'm going on to it to help pre-shrink some of it as I'm getting to it. And then cook it down. Again, I'm not holding it with my left hand trying to go over this. I'm letting the iron go ahead and push down on the film and tilt the EPP around. So now I'm going to go ahead and cook the edges down all the way around so it seizes down onto the other film that's overlapped onto the top. All the way around. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and cut some reliefs around the edges and then roll it up. Okay, I'll kind of show you how I'm rolling the edges here. I put a couple weights on there to help me. I'm usually using my left hand on there. So what I'll do is I'll hang this off the edge of the table. And then to roll these edges up, actually I need to cut a relief in the middle of that. Hold on. I will cut one relief right in the very middle of the apex here. I'll move it out a little bit. But I'll go through and just do this on all of it. Around the edges. Kind of warm the edge up and roll it up and on. So that's what you're going to want to do around the whole thing, is you're going to want to roll it up and on, and then you'll end up rolling it over. But I get it all rolled up on first around the edges, and then I'll go ahead and lock it in all the way around after. Okay, I have them fully laminated. What I've also done now, since they're fully laminated, I laid this straight edge right on the very center dividing line between them, because they're all laminated together, so we were able to get these straight when we built them. So now what I'm going to do is lay this down on here, tape this down so it's nice and straight on that straight edge, and then I'm going to take a razor and I'm going to slice that gap all the way down this whole thing. And once I do that, this will go ahead and allow me to break these apart, and then I'll do is I'll flip this to the other side, and then I'll make a nice same slice down the center there, and then I'm going to roll all that laminating film on with the iron again, and then I think I'm going to cap that whole edge again with some film around that edge. You can see I've cut that edge now. It's beautiful all the way across. Now it's a matter of flipping it over and cutting the other side. Okay, back to the Elevons. You can see one of them turned out pretty straight. One of them I have a little bit of a bend in. This one actually turned out pretty straight, but say you did them and no matter what, you just couldn't get them straight. Well, there's pretty much an easy fix for that. So say you did them, you didn't get them straight, you were going to wrap that trailing or the leading edge of that Elevon, and you just keep looking at it and it just it's crooked. So what I've done is I've laid a little bit of tape on this and kind of made it so it's like a sticky back by rolling it a little bit, and then you can lay the straight edge right on the straight edge and just lay it on the straight trailing edge, or the crooked trailing edge I should say, and you can see how this one's a little crooked. It's got a little bit of space here, but through the middle it's a little bit bigger. You know, you are going to tape it to the trailing edge of the plane, so the plane is going to pull it up pretty tight, but if you want to go ahead and give it a good straightening, you go ahead and do something like this. Lay this down on there, a really nice straight edge. Get yourself a brand new snap razor out of the package. Now I have my straight edge laying on the Elevon. I'm going to go ahead and give it a trim. This is what I usually do with the wood Elevons to make the edges of them true, because a lot of times the wood, again too, doesn't come from the factory. So you could use this same type of process on the wood Elevons if you get the wood Elevons, if you want to really make the trailing edges of your wood Elevons nice and true. So lay your straight edge on there. Hold your angle. Got a little bit of a bevel on it. And try to do it like one nice linear stroke. And what you did is you trimmed off the area that was a little less true than you desired. Now that edge is sharp and straight, and now you can go ahead and run your, I mean, I didn't cut anything off, but barely, if that's not even barely over a 1/16 of an inch or so. And now you can take this trailing edge of this and you can wrap it with laminating film, or wrap it with your hinge tape and then tape it onto the plane, because now it'll go right on the back of the plane very nicely, and it's nice and straight. So when you hold it up to the back of the plane, actually, let's go to the other side. You can see there's not really any gap all the way down it. So, and then when you do tape it to it, you also pull it towards it a little bit. But the thing is very, very, very torsionally stiff now and rigid. So go ahead and you can go ahead and do that and tape it on with your hinge tape. You know, you might want to run your iron over it once real quick just to make sure the edges are down. But I'm going to wrap this with a little bit more of your laminating film just to seal up that trailing edge, and you got a perfect Elevon there. So if you do make it and all else fails and you don't get it straight and you're irritated, you can go ahead and get a nice straight edge. Again, lay it on top of here. Boom. Once you lay it on top, trim it. Just use a nice sharp razor. It works really, really good. So you have a way to fix it if something's going wrong. All right, guys, let's do a little hinging on these Elevons. Got them trimmed, got them nice and straight. You can see I put a little tape in 3 sections here. So we can go ahead and start the hinging on the top, and then in the exact same spot on the bottom, I put a tape, and a tape on the exact same spot on the opposite side. And I don't go very far up onto the rubber tape. And what I'm doing here is, you know, to get this straight and get this started, I have some tape pulled off the edge of the table here in some lengths, and I'm going to do what we call here is a Z-hinge. So on a Z-hinge, what we do is we take the tape and we overlap it by about 3/16 of an inch. Actually, not even that. More like just under 1/8 of an inch, or say 2 to 3 millimeters. And when we do that, we will slide the tape in the gap. The area that is overlapped on the tape stays in the gap underneath the bottom of the plane in the hinge area. So now that the tape is face to face, what I do is on the bottom of the plane, I have it taped to the back end here, and I'll pull it back just a little bit, and I'll trim that tape off a little bit. But what we're doing is we're leaving that tape in this rooted area behind the back end of the Elevon hinge. Then on the other side, we have the tape goes the opposite way, so it's not sticking to the plane, it's actually sticking to the Elevon. And what we're doing is we're hinging underneath the aircraft, and then it comes out, up, and then over and onto the Elevon. It's what they call a Z-hinge. So it basically goes from the Elevon, over the top of the Elevon, underneath the hinge line, and then over and tapes to the wing. And then we do another one just like that, but we do it doing the exact opposite of that. So I'm getting another piece of tape, and we'll do this in 3 places on this hinge line. So again, I will take the tape, I will stick it together a little bit. So now we are going on top of the wing, not the Elevon. We're going to go underneath the Elevon. So I'm going to cut it a little bit short. So now, again, the tape goes right into the joint. The overlap point is in the joint hinge area, is down inside this area here, and then you tape it on. So now you have a Z hinge, and the Z hinge itself, you have one that goes under the plane and then on top of the Elevon, and then one that goes under the Elevon and then on top of the plane. And then what you get is you get a very, very straight and true tape hinge area, And when you pull on it, it pulls to the edge here. And what we'll do is we'll do that here. We'll do it once in the middle. What I'll do is I'll put a Z hinge, one on this side, and have one go under the wing and then onto the Elevon. And then on the other side, I'll have one on under the Elevon and then comes up on top of the wing on the other side of this hinge joint here. So it might take a little bit longer, but when the airplane's Elevon pulls, what's nice is it pulls to where it's hinged on top of the control surface and then underneath the wing, and then the opposite on the other side. So when it actually pulls, it pulls nice and tight, and it pulls it to that sharpest edge of the trailing edge of the foam. So again, I'm going to overlap the tape a little bit. I'll turn the hinge so I can actually get it down in the joint. I got my finger underneath so I can grab a hold of the sticky. So I'm going to pull it down into the gap so you can see it here. So I'm going to fold it on top of the Elevon, and then underneath the plane I'm going to land it on the back side of the foam. You can always take that excess and put it right on that cap. I'm also going to run another piece of tape across here when we're done. So we're going to do that again, and we're going to do it on the other side of that piece that I just put down, but the exact opposite way. So we have these hinges that go down in 3 places on the aircraft that help these stay centered. So now I'm going to go on top of the trailing edge of the foam, and then underneath the Elevon takes a little bit of manipulation skills to get this done, but it makes for the best true hinge you could possibly get. On an aircraft that's running tape hinges. So again, now I'm going to tape it to where the overlapping pieces of tape is down under the wing, just inside the root joint. Then I'm laying it down on top of the foam. And then I am flipping it over and going up onto the Elevon. And I don't take it too far up onto the Plastidip because I'm going to run another piece of tape along that edge. And you can see when I run it on that edge, it looks like this. So it kind of covers those areas right there. And what you do is you do 50-50 tape. You do 50 tape on the wing and 50% on the Elevon. And then when I tape the backside, I do the same thing. I'll do tape only onto the trailing edge here, and then I will wrap it over and then onto the Elevon. So we have a really nice hinge. So you have this hinged multiple ways. We're getting closer. Again, I'm going to slide it down into the joint. Now I'm laying it down onto the rubber. I'm going to trim it back a little bit so it doesn't go crazy, because this is just going to get covered with tape anyways. And then on the bottom, again, pull it up. Make sure, hold your fingers underneath so that all the edges are true. Don't pull it too hard, but pull it up and make it nice and snug. So again, I have the piece of tape on top of the wing. It goes on top of the wing and then underneath and under the Elevon like a Z. So we'll go ahead and make another one. And do the exact opposite way. Sorry. You want to take that piece of scrap and just run it right over the top. So now you have a Z-hinge, and the Z-hinge nice and true all the way down. And what I'll do is I'll run another piece of tape across here now. On this molded foam, you always want to tape to an area that's been Plastidip. If it doesn't have a layer of Plastidip on it, your hinging tape will not stick well. That is the whole reason for Plastidip. That and it actually adds very good protection from UV and from abrasions. Okay, I'll get a really nice hinge. And when I do this one, I'll tape it on the back side, but I won't wrap it way onto the bottom of the wing. I'll only wrap it up onto the contour. And right on the wing joint, just give it a little bit of pull and some nice pressure, and fold it back on. I'll usually cut a couple reliefs in here as it folds on, just because it makes it easier to work with. The EPP Elevons aren't as clean and pretty as the wood Elevons, but they are very, very functional. They have really good performance, and they're very, very durable. If you see any bubbles that you have in there left over, you can go through with your razor or a needle and pop the bubbles a little bit and push it down. There you go. And now the hinge itself wants to stay up a little bit. So what I'll usually do is go through with a little bit of warmth. Don't touch it on the Plastidip, but just touch it onto the hinge line, and this will get the hinge to relax a little bit. And I'll do it a little bit on the back of the hinge. And this helps also adhere the tape to the Plastidip a little bit better, even though it sticks really good already. And now the hinge is more relaxed and it's fluid. So there you go. That's how to do the Z-hinge on the Drak. Okay, we have the molded Drak with its control rods put on. Just going to give you a close-up here. Cut a nice slot for the servo wires to come through from the servo. I've cut that slot with a soldering iron, and it's got a piece of solid copper number 12 gauge stuck into the front of the iron, and we use this to make the nice hole. The actual hole, I used the base of the servo, drew around it, and I just made that be my template. It's super simple and it works really well. Servo zeroed, you can see the horn, it's sticking straight up. I put the ball link on the very front of the servo, so when this is articulating and it needs to twist a little bit, the ball link will let it roll just a little bit. Right now you can see I have a jig. This is a molded Drak trim jig. In the center where the line is the center of the valley. I have it taped on the wing, and I have it taped on the control surface. So now the control surface has the right amount of reflex in it for when this is centered. So I'm trying to get everything fairly zeroed first. Now I will go through and put a couple drops of rubbing alcohol, or I should say denatured alcohol, where the metal meets the metal here in the clevis. And then I will take my soldering iron and some silver solder, and I will heat this up and add some solder in this joint. So the rear is the solder clevis, the front is the ball link. We're gonna go ahead and solder up the clevis. I always put the solder clevis at the horn. This allows you to have about half the threads available. So when you get this, you wanna screw your ball joint on about 5 or 6 revolutions so you can get a little bit of thread in here so you have some adjustability. Once you get it into place, you have the capability of adjusting it in the field later. So do not lock these in, do not lock the shrink in until after you're in the field and you have all your field testing done and everything is basically zeroed and centered where you want it. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and solder the rear end of this clevis. What I do is I put a little bit of denatured alcohol on this clevis where the two metals meet, put a little bit of silver solder on the soldering tool, heat up the side of the clevis, and when you heat up the side of the clevis, you'll be able to wick that solder directly into the clevis. There it goes. And pull it off, there you go. And that allows the clevis to be silver soldered. If you do need in the field to adjust it, you have the capabilities of either unsoldering it and adjusting it slightly, or you can adjust this end here by spinning this in or out a little bit. So do not lock your shrink tubes in place until you got this centered and the aircraft is flying correctly. Okay guys, as far as the placement of your servo horns, I put the rear servo horn so it is straddling over the fiberglass rod that goes on the Elevon. It's really close to the hinge line as far as the pull points on the horn. I usually put it at the top so you get the most amount of resolution, and then up at the very other end where the servo is, I usually go one hole up off the bottom of the airplane so it doesn't bind. And this gives you some good resolution. It allows you to use the servo in its motion and travel to where it's not binding against the airplane, and it gives you really good torque. So Again, I usually use diagonal corners on the screws. You don't need all 4 screws. The other screw would probably hit right there anyways. These things are way overkill for servo horns anyways. And then on the bottom, the same thing on the bottom. You end up straddling the fiberglass on the bottom. And you know, I usually clip them off and then I put a dab of goop on the end of each one of those sharp ends of those screws that got clipped off. When I do lay it out, the first thing I do is I put the servo in. I hot glue the servo into the hole with a pool of hot glue on the very bottom, and then I run a bead of goop around it. And this is due to serviceability. If I want to take this servo out, I could either slice with the razor right around the top, and then stick a little alcohol on the bottom, and the servo pops right out. And then you can pull the rubber goop off later in the future if you need to do that. Or you can grab that goop with a pair of needle noses and you can pull it off, squirt a little alcohol on the bottom under the servo, and you pop it right out. But once you put the servo in, get your horn centered, stick it straight up, put your ball link on, and once you get the ball link on, take that measurement from the center of the ball link to the root of the aircraft, and then come out, and you can see I put a dot here, and that dot is the center of this when you're looking parallel to there. So if you can get this measurement from this edge to the center, come over to here and go from that edge to the center, and you mark it and then place it. It's real simple to do that. And then just use a regular pin vise or a very small drill bit with a drill to get that through there, and just do diagonal corners. So it gives you a quick, easy way to lay out the ball joints and get your rods straight. And then when these rods are being used, you can see this one here tilts just a little bit. This allows it to roll a little bit like it needs to. So the ball links are a good thing. When this airplane's flying, the airplane is only moving about 1/4 inch up and 1/4 inch down from its neutral point. So the articulation on this is, when you're flying, is about this much. So we're not worried about having these 90 degrees to the control surface. And the reason I don't do them 90 degrees to the control surface is because mechanically, yeah, it might be a little bit better mechanically, but this part of the airfoil, the air is coming in this way, it's swirling in, and it's hitting the fence. As it's hitting the fence, it's getting a very smooth flow of air across the control surface, and that's where your effective part of the control surface is and your elevator is. So now, if you take this and you run this at an angle across here, any of that air that's traveling in here to hit this wing fence is now getting disrupted across the airfoil. I'm trying to keep this airflow as it's coming in across here as straight and as linear as possible. So at this point, when it comes across, having these rods come back straighter, I've actually noticed the airplane handles a little bit better. And with the minimal amount of movement that this control surface needs to move, a little bit off angle is not going to hurt anything on this. So there you go. All right, guys, here's a quick build description of how to do the straps that hold the wings together. The kit will come with some Velcro. I usually put the hook side of the Velcro up on each side of the aircraft. I hot glue these pieces down so they're nice, recessed a little bit down on the aircraft, and then basically when you put the fuzzy side down on the strap between them, you pull the wings together and you strap the wings together. You can undo it from either side. You can see also where the servo wire would go through and into the nearest compartment. So you have the capability of running the wire directly into your flight controller through here, or you can stick that other wire, a mate wire and an extension out this gap here and just plug that servo wire directly into it. But you can see where the gap is here, so if you need to fold up any excess wire, you can fold it into there. And then, when it's said and done, this is what you have. You got a very nice low profile wing keeper. So there's not a lot of side force generated on these aircraft, so it only needs a little bit of force holding these on. And that Velcro actually, I haven't seen it come off at all. We've crashed these things, even in a crash, it pretty much stays on. So it's a pretty super simple and stout way to keep the wings on during flight, and it's a really easy way to remove everything after flight. So What's nice with having the hook side up is if your fuzzy side ever wears out, all you have to do is replace this top piece of Velcro. You know, on some of these, I've actually gone through and took a piece of, put hot glue on top of here and put a piece of lamb over these. But if you want it replaceable, what's nice is you can always replace the fuzzy side, which is usually the side that wears out this way. So a good easy way to put the wings and hold them onto the aircraft. And then when it's all said and done, all you have to do is grab a hold of the wing, pull it over, and stick it down.